Yep.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Omnic Lab. This is episode 123 of the show. We're going to be talking a little bit differently this week. We're not going to be focusing on strategies inside the game. No. We're going to be talking about the stories in the game of Overwatch. I'm your host, Rob May, coming in from Monday night, late in Japan, and an early morning in the nice sunny Georgia. We have Andres Gomez. What's up, Andres?
Rise and shine for me starting the week over here. I'm excited about this episode. Last time we did a lore episode was about like a year and a half ago, and we didn't have a lot of, well, we had a lot of information, but not as much as we have right now. And even though this has been a relatively slow year for lore compared to the year it was launched, we're still getting a few juicy pieces of information. And with BlizzCon coming up, new events in the horizon, we thought it was a good point to discuss where we are in the story and where we think it's going, what we want to see, etc.
I'm really excited about this episode as well because Andres and I are going to go about this a lot different than what we initially did, which was like trying to really scoop up the entire topic and talk to you in about an hour and a half. And so what we've done this time is we've kind of like tried to include everything we could about things that were new, and again, things that are new is in big fat quotation marks, because the last time we talked about lore outside of just like a normal release in the news cycle at nauseum was May 2016. Okay, so like we've gotten a lot of stuff since then, not necessarily like a lot of new characters, but we got a lot of maps, we got some more information just from the developers, like giving us teasers, we've gotten interviews, we've gotten just the new heroes being released, their comics, like we've gotten all kinds of cool stuff. So Andres and I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork here and talk about historically more of the kind of like the bad guys of Overwatch. I feel like we didn't really get a whole lot of that initially with the game's launch. We kind of knew that there were bad guys at place with the Omnic crisis and with Blackwatch. Kind of like, are these guys really bad guys? But over the last like year and a half, we've kind of realized that they're kind of in between. They're kind of the guys
Very
that don't play
gray
by the
area,
rules.
yeah.
The Batmans of Overwatch, if you will. And then we're going to talk a lot about talent and a lot of speculation there at the end. But we need to run the gamut on some announcements. So, Andres, let's start off with talking sponsorships. So we have our good friend, Ben. Why don't you tell the friends at home about Top Score Solutions here?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you know Ben. He's been a sponsor for a long time, but if you don't, he goes by I Need Peeling, and as always, he offers free business consulting in the esports field. You can reach out to him on his Discord or go to his website, topscoresolutions.com. You can reach out to him on Twitter at topscoreesports. He's a great guy. Reach out to him if you're looking for this kind of advice.
Additionally, I'd like to remind you that we're having our game night at the end of the month. That is this week on Friday night, as per usual. And Friday night. It is arbitrary. It's not a traditional start time. So if you're home and it's Friday night or Saturday morning, depending on if you're on the other side of the globe like me, or if it's Friday night and you're on stateside, you can have a game night to come hang out with. There will be a lot of people there this time. However, with a lot of stuff kind of kicking off into the BlizzCon, where I'm not really sure on our outcome. But if you do come, let us know. We're going to try to get together and play a lot of games. This will be our first game night with new Torbjorn and all of the new hit scan changes with also the Pharah changes. So that'll be a lot of new environment to go test some things out if you're interested. We also have quite a few of our higher level players that are relatively good at teaching Doomfist, I've come to find out. So if you guys are wanting to learn how to play Doomfist or play Sombra, a lot of our players are doing some VOD reviews on them and Reinhardt as of this week. So you can go learn that. We also have our friend and yours Switch with Omnic Meta, and he and I were pretty upset that there's something going on with the Blizzard API over the course of the last week and a half. Ever since he came on the show to replace me, Think Switch. We talked about Andres's data on the website, and then all of the data just broke. So we're not really sure what's going on. It's even telling me my profile's private sometimes. So kind of be patient with it. Log in, log out. Work with Switch in the back end. See if you can figure out and troubleshoot what's going on, or if it's just on Blizzard's end. But the systems are not necessarily on his end all the time, and he just wanted me to make sure that we mentioned that this week for you.
Yeah, quite unfortunate, especially since we had such a good episode last week with him explaining how the website works and everything. I still recommend everyone to check it out, even if the website is not working properly at the moment. I'm sure he'll figure it out eventually. But the episode is still very valuable just in terms of how to use stats to improve your gameplay.
Absolutely. And last up, we have Calm Before the Storm. Andres and I will be participating on the Overwatch panel November 1st at 10 p.m. through 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is the last time it will be standard before it, Pacific Daylight Time. I don't know why I put this as standard time. It's switching over to standard the next week, actually. So we'll be on the 4th floor of the Anaheim Hilton outside of the Anaheim Convention Center. So you guys can find us there. It will be in the same place it was last year, I believe. And I will be moderating. Andres will also be dual representing Owl Recap. And you will also see personalities such as the young Bobby, Lazen Bob. You will see him there. I forgot his last name, Bob Schizler. You also see Mel there representing the Cavalry. I also think that Icy will be there representing Into the Iris.
That's right.
And also, she has a really cool Overwatch cosplay, I believe, that she is keeping super sauce secret, but she won't even tell us what it is, but it is Overwatch related, I believe, through my own personal speculation. So you guys can see us there. And also, Totemly Drunk will be there from Overwatch Recall. Shout out to Overwatch Recall for having me on as a promotionary guest. That was a lot of fun to be interviewed for Omnic Lab there. But let's get through and start talking the lore. All right, let's set the stage. I know I've been talking a lot, but I'm going to set the stage and let Andres cut loose about Blackwatch because that's where his boy McCree goes. Over 30 years ago, without warning or explanation, a decommissioned set of automated mega factories reactivated themselves and launched a worldwide military campaign against all humanity, dubbed the Omnic Crisis. Despite deploying new technologies, including powered armor and super soldier programs, no nation alone could stand against the growing Omnic army, and thus started the Omnic Crisis.
Sounds very ominous. Like if you ever think about this in present time, it would be like as if Amazon got shut down, and then all of a sudden the factories reactivated themselves with nobody there, and started sending out packages everywhere to the world. And at first you're like, oh man, Amazon packages, this is really cool. But then they keep coming and coming and coming. And eventually your house is just overrun with packages. The streets, packages. Airports, packages. Uber, packages. And this is how Amazon takes over the world.
They sent me one too many cushions, man, from my couch. And this is what I get. The Omnic Crisis of packages.
But by the way, I have nothing against Amazon. But like it's like the equivalent, you know, just Omniums just start making automated
Tesla took over the
Omnics.
world.
Yeah. With
Tesla
machine
cars
guns
attacking you. Yeah, I really like this. The setting, again, like sitting you at the 30-year ago mark helps us kind of tangibly see how long this crisis lasted for. We also know that there's automated and decommissioned mega factories. What those are, we aren't really sure. We do know that there's god programs like Athena and something in Anubis that kind of basically it sounds like a lot of all of the companies in the world, or sorry, not all the companies, all the nations in the world have some kind of Omnic or artificial intelligence, AI, robotic technology that they were cooking up for some sort of national defense, and they wanted them to be almost autonomous and have their own sentience. And what happened was these mega computers that created them Like this, they went straight Skynet. If you've guys have watched Terminator, man, they went going for it.
Right, right. So, like, the question that I have that they were never like very clear about in the story is obviously they have these huge facilities that can produce Omnics. They're automated, so it sounds like you don't need humans in there, right? Like the factories are self-sufficient as long as they can have materials,
Mm.
you're good to go. They can start making things on their own. It also makes it seem that the factories can think for themselves. So this is like the part that they're not very clear about. Like at one point they had these factories, but at one point they became self-aware, right? And
Yeah.
they develop almost like emotions because that's what omnics are at this point in the story. They're like sentient robots, right? Robots that feel, think, kind of like Zenyatta.
Yeah, like we saw something really cool in this, and I think that this is a really old comic. I don't even know when it released, but if you guys could go back in the archives and look up mission statement, that's the Farah comic. And this is where you really start seeing how threatening these things can be. And like you really get a peek on it. Because not only are the robots or the Omnics, which are synonymous in colloquialism terms according to Overwatch, story development, the Omnics themselves and these supercomputers are both sentient, meaning they
Right.
have their own thought processes, their own AI.
Yeah, they became so advanced that now they think for themselves. So these factories at one point were like, you know what? Let's just make a bunch of robots and take over the world. Like they thought about this and they did. The factories were shut down, meaning that they were not working, but they reactivated themselves. The comic that you mentioned is also very interesting. Let's touch on that for a minute because in the Farah comic, Farah's team gets hired to go shut down this God program, like Rob was talking about, which is they call it Anubis, and it takes place in the Anubis map, I believe. That's the setting of why you're there. Um,
Yeah, it says what's happened is it's getting really worse. The Anubis AI, one of the God programs Overwatch guaranteed after the Omnic crisis, broke its containment at 11 o'clock for this current mission when you're reading the comic. Company sent engineers to the team in 3 hours from then to go get control, and the command center has went dead since then. So they have no information.
and one thing to note about these God programs is that they can reprogram Omnics. So sentient Omnics that might be good, they can. It's almost like a virus that can get into their brain and rewire them in order to override their sentient part, the part that makes them kind of individuals like humans, and basically control them. So it's an interesting thing to think about an Omnic, right? Like an object that can think, feel kind of like a human, but it's still ones and zeros, so it still has maybe the vulnerabilities that a computer would have, right?
Yeah, it's either that or maybe the story is setting it up because the nice thing about Overwatch teams storytelling is that it's got the two-edged sword of being vague, right? In being vague, you can kind of spin the story how you like and kind of retcon some certain things later on and make sense of it all because you weren't specific, right?
Right.
But then they also have the advantage or the disadvantage of having people upset because they don't have anything concrete in which they can kind of tell their stories or enjoy the game.
In
So
in that story
we
in particular, though, they reconciliate both packs in a very interesting way. When Farah's team goes in, they have an Omnic in their team, which is part of the team, just like
yeah.
the other guys. But the God program eventually takes over this Omnic, and the Omnic realizes what is happening, and in order to save the team, he chooses to kill himself. Right in the
You
story,
said
that's
Anubis is taking control of his body. The Omnic's name is Okoro, which I'm pronouncing like a Japanese person, but Okoro. And he says that his systems are basically getting taken control of, and something is really bad is about to happen. That's all he can get off before he shoots himself for fear of destroying his own allies. And then
right.
that kicks them off into being attacked by a ambush outside of Anubis before they can infiltrate to where the God program is. They finally get into this organization area, which is something that I sent to Andres in the pre-show called Helix Securities, an international security program is what this thing, I guess, must have originally been for.
I think the
And
Helix security program was hired to protect the God program, but eventually the God program kind of like started working on its own. They
yeah,
sent engineers to shut it down, didn't work. At that point, they were like, okay, we can't risk it, send a strike team. And that's when Farah goes in there.
bingo. So they go in there and they're doing some sort of they're trying to prevent it from universally uploading the same content to all Omnics, basically sending out a really large reactivation thing. And so they finally shoot a bunch of missiles at it and it stops.
Right. And by the way,
But
Helix
they're
Securities is Anna's company, Anna Amari, Farah's mom. That's her
that's
own
correct.
like own company, protection company, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, just really interesting that the Omnic chooses to take its own life, right? Like obviously he has enough feelings for his teammates and he knows what's about to happen that he rather sacrifice himself than see them die. So very very human like in that sense. But then again, juxtaposed with that, I'm still a robot and my systems can be reprogrammed and I can be taken over by this machine. Probably a very advanced machine. I don't think it's probably that easy to hack into an Omnic, but it's almost like, I don't know, like hypnotism to a human or something where you just like kind of take over their mind.
Yeah, it just makes it really interesting because you have these things like when you see what happens when an EMP hits in the game for functionality, it removes shields from Omnic. So they obviously have a very immediate effect, right? Right? Like, and you also have that they have some form of override. The supercomputers or the super agencies that have made these sentient Omnics somehow have some sort of hierarchy structure within them, meaning that they basically can take control over their sentience and say, no, this is what's going to happen. And it's almost like you're doing a manual override on their systems or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah, very interesting there. Also, they haven't said this, but at least it's implied that Omnics can die like humans, right? There's somewhere implied in there that you can't just bring back an Omnic like a computer where you can just maybe reset the data or have a backup and just kind of like redo it again.
Yeah.
Because
The
it
only,
happens with Mondada, right? He's like the most famous Omnic that we know was assassinated. You know, it's a big deal. He's no longer with us. There was no like, hey, let's just
well, we
reset
also have
Mondada.
Okoro who blew his own skull
Right. So it
frame
does
out as
it does
well.
seem like the
There's an element of
once
finality.
yeah, once something happens to them, like their brains get blown out or something, there's no going back, kind of like a machine, which does makes them pretty unique in one of them.
Now,
Like,
I'm glad you brought that up, Andres, because watching back, if you go and watch um the only animated short that doesn't have a single word of dialogue, the Bastion one, it it actually has him accessing what's called a B-73 model or a Bastion 73 model on the fields of Sweden before he escapes the forest and meets Torbjorn. He has his little self heal tool that he accesses a memory chip in one of these models and relives the battle that he was basically asleep after inside the forest, and is basically able to re-experience this and kind of trigger his original purpose for going on to attacking the Swedish city.
yeah, Bastion, it's a very interesting character too, because Bastion is not an Omnic as we know him, like a traditional Omnic like Zenyatta or Mandara is, that have very advanced personalities. They're very human like. They lead crowds of people, and even humans look up to them, right? Like they have crossed the barrier into humandom quite far. But Bastion, on the other hand, he was
He
built
lacks
as a
communication.
yeah, and he was built as a combat robot. He wasn't built to be sentient in that sense, right? He's just a program that goes and executes very, very advanced robotics, but not a Omnic in the traditional sense of the word. But somehow, like you were saying, once he reactivates in the forest, he interacts with Ganymede, the little bird, and he almost like it starts enjoying nature and starts reprogramming itself. It's almost like
Well, he's
the
experiencing something in the first way. It's almost like an infant, right? Being exposed to something for the first time, or a child.
right. It's almost like their way of trying to show how these machines eventually became sentient and were able to like reprogram themselves, write code inside of their brains that eventually led to these thoughts, feelings. I don't know. I think it's like a very rudimentary, like, hey, I'm becoming alive, kind of like in the Bastion short.
But then, like, you see other things where the systems kick in when he hears the woodpecker sound on the tree and just reacts, goes full into combat mode because that's what the programming was that he had inside of him. So he, even though we know he has a realm of sentience, he's making decisions even in the short, and he has some form of emotional connection to something. Even if he doesn't use speech, he has the emotion that you're seeing through his actions and his I guess his whistles and sounds and beeps and his boops. Okay, so even though he does these things, you can kind of see how he reacts to things, and even Ganymede somehow convinces him to do what he shouldn't necessarily do from his memory banks. He's doing something else, and so this is really, really cool because they're using a robot or an Omnic or an AI system to kind of represent, without even using language, the syndrome of PTSD.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some people in the chat over here mentioning that like he kind of suffers from PTSD and that triggers some sort of emotional response. I think that makes sense. Yeah. By the way, big shout out to Carol X Danvers for the Twitch Prime. Thank you so much.
Twitch Prime. Awesome. Yeah, so let's get into this past the Omnic crisis. We don't want to stick on these things too long because we really want to talk about speculation and Blackwatch. So where does Blackwatch come into this is probably one of the things you're wondering. So after the UN forms Overwatch to combat the Omnic crisis, remember, this is 30 years ago. So over the course of 20 years during the Omnic crisis, Overwatch serves as basically a global peacekeeping force and just overall world betterment, as well as some space exploration mixed in, because why not have a crazy hamster and a sentient gorilla? So controversy, though, somewhere in the midst of this, within Blackwatch and Talon, basically Talon somehow comes in before Overwatch is started to getting investigated or has some kind of like shady practices, because basically the programs of Overwatch peacekeeping effort take down the Overwatch the Omnic crisis as a whole. They basically systematically dismantle the Omnics, so they're no longer a threat.
Let's touch on Overwatch for a second, though, like the organization itself. It got brought together by the UN. It was like a last-ditch effort of humanity. They're like, hey, your individual efforts are not working. Our countries are getting overrun. We need the best of the best to come together, and we have to do this as a whole, right? So Overwatch comes in. Best of the best get put together. We know there's like an initial ones that found like Soldier 76, Ana, Reinhardt, Torbjorn. Yeah, Gabriel Reyes, or Reaper as he's known now. They all kind of come together. Overwatch grows really large, and they're extremely successful in their endeavor, right? Like they're able to stop a lot of the wars. They put order into the world. Omnics get relegated into like this second-class citizen, right? Like because the war happened, and now there's a lot of Omnics that are still in the world that were not necessarily involved in the war, right? They just live in cities. They were not trying to harm humans or anything, but that leaves a bitter taste in everyone's mouth. So everyone kind of hates Omnic a little bit. There's certain cities that are a little more accepting of them, but we know places like London, Kings Row, they hate Omnics. They don't want them anywhere near. There's a big resentment.
Well, there's a lot of like dissension between the members in that area, and there was an extremist group called Null Sector, and that's where you get the uprising.
Right.
Null Sector strikes London.
But basically, to make all this happen, like Overwatch has to do a big undertaking, right? Like these are huge missions. They have to gather a lot of intel. They have to be ahead of the game. They're fighting super advanced, intelligent robots. You can't be playing around with these things. And there's also some people that don't want to see you succeed out there in the world of Overwatch. We know that there's some shady figures that kind of want the world to be in a little bit of a form of distress. They have a lot to gain from that. So Overwatch unfortunately had a very big humps to overcome in, getting the world in order, and especially after the Omnic crisis, um, they find themselves having to do certain unconventional things in order to be able to keep peace. And it's kind of like the side of Overwatch that doesn't get talked a lot, but it's also the side of Overwatch that eventually was their demise. And we're talking specifically about Blackwatch, which was a team inside of Overwatch led by Gabriel Reyes that was basically in charge of doing the dirty laundry. If there was something that needed to be done that couldn't be done, by normal legal means, but was still very necessary in order for Overwatch success and keeping the order in the world, there is Blackwatch. You got them right there to do your bidding
The
for you.
The difference between having the military face of your country, and then you have kind of your black ops. You have your CIA and your FBI, the people that are really getting down to the dirty work and do some super shady stuff, but they don't tell anybody what's going on.
Exactly.
And they don't abide by any rules.
One thing to note, though, is that Gabriel Reyes was basically in charge of that section of Overwatch, and they had almost like an unspoken agreement between him and Commander Morrison or Soldier 76, where it was like, you do your thing, just, don't tell me.
Don't tell me about it.
Yeah, he kind of like turned the blind eye on them. He knew that some things were getting done not exactly the right way, but results were getting, made. And Overwatch was very successful. And, it ended up kind of blowing in both of their faces at that point. But I'll let you introduce Blackwatch and kind of like how they blew their cover.
There's a few linchpins here. So basically, after the 20 years of service, somewhere along the line, the Omnic crisis gets taken down. Talon, like most companies that write in the villains, basically, I'll quote the wiki page. At the moment, very little is known about Talon's overarching objectives for the reasoning for their actions. However, their methods are undeniably villainous. That's a good villain. under the shade of obscurity and the very obvious tones of they're just evil. Okay. But it's such a 90s villain for you right there, but I really appreciate this kind of villainy. But basically,
I love 90s villains. I miss them.
90s villains just being evil just makes the world so much easier. Like, they're bad. Kill the bad guy. But basically the UN investigated the practices of Overwatch while they're doing all these things, and the problem was, I believe, was they were getting a lot of backlash for how they were going about peacekeeping, combined with a bunch of failure missions. The general public somehow found out about Blackwatch's existence. Basically, the fact that they were doing double duty with Overwatch and Blackwatch and doing some things secretly and some things openly.
The most famous of them being the Rialto mission. Was it in
the Retribution?
Yeah, Retribution event in Rialto, when they basically get exposed for... After Gabriel Reyes kills the guy, he basically got mad and pissed off at the guy that was like, oh, you think you're not going to get in trouble? Well, bam, kill you. And they were exposed. Everyone knew that he had been them.
And I'm trying to pull open his name right here, but I'm only coming up with the wrong list. Oh, here we go. So the gentleman who was killed by Gabriel Reyes in Venice, his name was Antonio Barlotti. And also, if you're remembering, there's another member that Doomfist killed upon the comic Masquerade, and that is Viali, but he was not a he was actually a former council member of Talon.
Mm-hmm.
And Bartolotti was killed by Gabriel Reyes in the Retribution event. That was 8 years ago. So this is the Gabriel Reyes Blackwatch event kind of seems to be in a little bit of conflict. So somewhere along the lines between 20 years and 30 years, or sorry, 20 years and 10 years ago, that or current day, 20 years in current day.
I would say probably 8 years. This is probably more on the recent side.
That's when Overwatch got shut down. It's somewhere around there. There's
Yeah,
not a whole lot
so
of like concrete things.
after Blackwatch was exposed, it was like the perfect opportunity for everyone who didn't like Overwatch. And at this point, you have to think about the Omnic crisis has been over, peace has been brought back to the world, and Overwatch has become a huge organization that has moved on to, keep the peace in other areas. They don't have to fight Omnics anymore. So, at this point, they're fighting crime, which is not very lucrative for
Batman.
organizations on the shady side. You know what I mean? So a lot of these bad guys
Yeah.
want Overwatch gone for good because if they're not gone, they can't do their evil bad guy stuff. And once they get exposed after killing what's his name, Bertolotti.
Bartolotti, yes. The UN investigates this headquarters they find in the Overwatch's Swiss location, which I guess would have had a bunch of evidence because Soldier 76 and Reaper, aka Gabriel Reyes and Jack Morrison, somehow are reported dead at the scene, and that Overwatch Swiss base is destroyed. So
Yeah,
it's
there's
super sketchy.
there's not a lot of info there, but we know they were under investigation after this event. And then somehow, before they can come up to like a conclusion to the investigation, the headquarters of Overwatch in Switzerland explode. Gabriel Reyes and Soldier 76 are both there when it happens, and they're deemed dead. So, very interesting turn of events. Maybe Gabriel Reyes was trying to destroy some evidence. Maybe Morrison, at that point, finally his leadership, his moral side maybe kicked in, and he was like, no, no, no. We can't keep trying to hide this. We gotta do it the right way. We gotta come out. I don't know. This is all
Or
speculation
maybe
here.
they got in the two best friends now are total enemies, bad guy bro montage of them fighting and blowing up the base themselves, and they're like, crap, I need to leave. I'm Batman. No, I'm Superman.
Right.
And I have to
That's
leave,
what that's
basically.
what my speculation is of the event. Reyes is there to destroy evidence so that they don't get investigated and convicted or whatever. Morrison's
Mhm.
trying to stop him. Huge fight breaks out. Quarters are destroyed. Or I mean that's what I think, but it could also be that
Doomfist shows up. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, or
Everybody's
Morrison or Morrison's like, man, they're really gonna convict us for us. We
new
gotta destroy
Overwatch
this.
map confirmed. Switzerland destroyed by Doomfist, and everyone's just brawling. It's a new 8v8 8v8 death match. I don't know.
So just in general, big event, big event. The
Yeah.
explosion gets ruled as an accident, so nobody really gets there. But it's still, after that, Overwatch is shut down. Even though the
The
explosion was an
Petrus
accident,
Act
yeah,
shuts it down.
no mo.
So, are you ready to talk about Talon? Because this is where the juiciest speculation comes in. All right. So, there is a company by the name of Vishkar, which had its head technician in what's called a hard light architect in high ranks, or and a trade agent for this company by the name of Satya Vaswani. You will probably better know her as Symmetra. And Lucio's father, who was basically a design and creator of sonic technology within this company. Well, the CEO of this company goes by the name. I have to scroll down here. I have so much information in the show notes today. Sanjay Korpal. And apparently Sanjay Korpal also shows up in another comic, Masquerade, when Doomfist comes over. He's sitting at the table next to Maximilian and Moira before we knew who Moira was, and is also in the Moira backstory. So there are 2 Talon members that we know who are dead, one from Blackwatch and one from Doomfist. Technically 2 from Talon if you count Gabriel Reyes turning into Talon eventually, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Vishkar's CEO, Sanjay, as well as Maximilian, who are not current heroes but could be.
Right. We don't know if they're like have crazy abilities, but a lot of the members of Talon are also like just powerful, influential, rich
Yeah.
people.
So where does
Mm.
Vishkar fit in this? So what Vishkar did is in the comic book for Symmetra. I need to write this. I need to keep bouncing back and forth here. Sorry. It's called A Better World if you're looking for the comic. Basically, Sanjay sets up this meeting with the mayor of the Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and he goes in with Symmetra and tries to negotiate some kind of treaty so they can take over, or basically control the Rio de Janeiro. And what happens is he says no, and he sets up Symmetra to go into the Caldo Tower, and they destroy it and force his hand to take the treaty and negotiate the contract.
Yeah, very, very shady stuff over here. Like Vishkar Corporation is very interested in this building in particular. They come to Rio, they like talk to the mayor, like, hey, we want this building, we want to develop or stuff over here, probably for some shady stuff since the leader of the Vishkar Corporation is part of Talon. The mayor is like, no, we don't want your stuff over here. So basically what they do is they get in there, they demolish the place? Is that what happens?
Well, Symmetra basically infiltrates it with using her teleporter technology,
Yeah,
and then sets up some turrets and just destroys it from the inside out.
right. So the building is destroyed. At this point, the mayor has no option. He's losing a ton of money. The
He
building
has to take it.
He has to take the deal. Basically, they force his hand into selling the property. And now, yeah, that's how they start developing down in Rio de Janeiro. And we know that Lucio knows about this because his dad developed the sonic technology that the Vishkar Corporation uses. So, like all this crazy sound technology that Lucio has was developed by his dad, and he knows how evil the Vishkar Corporation is, and he's completely opposed to them coming into Rio de Janeiro. We also know that Lucio is a very free soul. He likes music. He likes people expressing themselves. Parties and like people just having fun. Symmetra and the Vishkar Corporation are the complete opposite. They are lovers of order and laws and everyone basically doing as they're told. Very structured, very organized. No, not a lot of room for self-thought, just a lot of this is what the leader says, this is what we're gonna do kind of thing. So kind of like very opposite to what Lucio stands for. And not only that, but I think Lucio is aware of maybe some of the evil deeds of the Vishkar Corporation, and he understands that their plans for coming into Rio are not necessarily for the good of everyone.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because Symmetra is basically the prince to the pauper, or sorry, the pauper to the prince type scenario. She's basically just plucked out of poverty and moved into this architectural thing, and she just throws herself into the education system and learns about all these constructs. And so she doesn't really have an option to disobey Sanjay. So in how they're spinning the story, they're not saying that Symmetra is completely guiltless, meaning that she's without like issue because she clearly destroyed this building, but she isn't necessarily putting her heart and soul into this destruction. She feels like also Talon's manipulating her.
Right. It's Symmetra's an interesting character because she's not necessarily evil herself, but she is working for this evil organization that is basically, I think, taking advantage of her talents. We know that Symmetra comes from a very disorganized background. We know that Symmetra is on the spectrum, and while she was in kind of like this hectic environment, she suffered a lot. She didn't feel like she fit. She probably had a hard life early on, and then she was picked up by the corporation, or what's his name, Sanjay.
Sanjay. Yeah, they're basically using her I think her spectrum of autism and her general belief that what she's doing is for the greatest good in society and humanity and best and basically creation of things, basically betterment, better society.
Bring
and
order
so they're
to
manipulating
society.
her.
Right.
Yeah, so they're manipulating her mindset with utilizing her spectrum of autism mixed with her talent and basically doing some sort of brainwashing.
Yeah.
Kind of like what they did with Widowmaker.
Yeah, almost. I mean, I don't know if they're doing brainwashing, but they're just misleading her, right? Because in Symmetra's eyes, she sees it as like, I grew up in this chaos and disorder, and it was terrible for me. And now I've come to see the light. I've developed these crazy abilities.
That's fair.
She probably has some talents that nobody else in that company has. She can use the technology in ways to create things that probably no other person in that company can do, right? She has an innate ability to like create these crazy designs and bring them to life with light, or whatever the technology is that they uses. But yeah, she's totally being taken advantage of because now she wants to bring this order with her ability to society. But what she doesn't understand is that the higher ups, her bosses, don't have the best interest of the world in mind. They don't want to bring order to society. They probably just want to gain power and richness, and they are using her
Yeah.
as a tool to keep expanding that. And Lucio hates Symmetra, but I think
He
that
becomes
they're
a freedom fighter
yeah, but
because of this.
they're both on the same side in the sense that they want the best for the world and their communities, but the way that they're going about it is complete opposites, right? Something
Right.
leads me to think that those two might end up being like really good friends in the future. Like there's the type of characters that are like they're so polar opposite that if they can find any middle ground, they can teach each other so much. You know what I
It's kind
mean?
of like a very good brother-sister dynamic, right?
Right.
Because it's just like, no, you're crazy and you're just a party kid and wants to do the whatever he wants to do and enjoy life. And there must be order is Symmetra, right? So it's really cool. And what we want to get into here is connecting these two to Sanjay. Because Sanjay seems to me like him and Maximilian. Maximilian got a lot of like hype after the Moira stuff and the Doomfist stuff came out, and then like both, from what I can tell, a lot of the community has kind of gone quiet on those two. And like we got basically okay, so we got Moira, and then we got Doomfist, and then they went quiet on the bad boys and the bad girls for a while, right? Because we got Hammond, we got the cute hamster from the moon to be our next anthropomorphic figure. We got Anna initially. Again, I have to go super far back in our archives because we haven't really talked about this, right?
At least that we know they're involved with talent. New heroes have been Sombra, Doomfist, and Moira. And let's talk about those three for a second.
And
As
Brigitte
well, but she's not
and
part of
Hammond.
talent though.
No, I'm just saying, like in the spectrum of what we've gotten,
Oh,
I
right,
don't
right,
know
right.
what they're gonna get to do with their direction. But what I will say is that even if it's not BlizzCon or even if it's not the next hero, I think Sanjay is on the list as far as what we're gonna be seeing for some kind of major involvement, at the very least with more content, and at the very best, he could be another hero on the bad boys list that's gonna be targeted coming to
Yeah, somebody
a
that we
theater
might
near
see
you.
coming. One thing to note about all these guys like Sanjay, Doomfist, Moira, Reaper, even.
Yeah.
And we know that there's an Omnic called Maximilian that he might also be a hero coming in at some point.
Mm-mm.
But they're an interesting bunch, right? Because if you think about them as a group, none of them really relate to one another. If you think about their personalities and their goals, they
Especially
all
Doomfist goals.
they all have like very different goals. I think some have financial goals, some have, power goals. Others like Mora just want like free reign to do her research, right? She just wants like a safe haven where
She's
she's
almost like
not
using
interrupted.
Talon. Her and Sombra are both like agents of Talon, and yet they're like, I'm the boss because I'm only using Talon to get as a means
This is
to what I want.
Yeah, this is the important thing. I think everyone in Talon has their own agenda. They're not a group that came together like Overwatch and to say
Right.
like we want to save the world, we want to better the world. No. On the other hand, they all have their own goals, their own very
They're utilizing the
individualistic goals.
organization.
Yeah, but they have been tied together because all of their goals are being stopped by one thing in common: Overwatch. And that's why they need to fight against. What is what has brought this group together. Very talented individuals, very powerful, but they I don't think they care about one another, right? Like they're just there for their own benefit.
Yeah, so here's my counterpoint to that, Andres, and what I'm looking at the game too with regards to lore. Because right now Overwatch is trying to reactivate per Winston's request at the very beginning, right? And we know that Talon is somewhat of a threat to something. But what? Like, what is it exactly that Talon is trying to do now that Overwatch is officially shut down? Why does Overwatch need to be back? What is it about the heroes that need to be reactivated? And what is it about Talon that they're trying to do? Because all we know that I can tell is the one short we got for Sombra, where Sombra has infiltrated Volskaya Industries and got that meeting with Katya to reveal something and make a friend with the chairman of the Russian board. And they want to go assassinate her for whatever the reason.
Oh yeah, that's right. Here's what I think is happening. Overwatch got shut down. We came into that from the start of Overwatch, and then any shorts that we've gotten of present day is actually of Talon, doing some sort of movement. I think that now that they finally got what they wanted, Overwatch is out of the way. They've been banned, illegalized. If any Overwatch agent tries to act under the Overwatch banner, they can be jailed and prosecuted and basically stopped on their tracks by any government.
Yeah.
So I feel like Talon feels like very immune at this point, and they're finally like making moves. Like we see things like they're bold enough to break into the Numbani art exhibit to steal Doomfist Gauntlet after Doomfist finally escapes prison. Like Doomfist finally sees that point where like I can make my escape from prison, and there'll probably be nobody out here to stop me about it. They send Reaper and Widowmaker to get his glove back. They start making the move on Katya Volskaya to try to assassinate her, which they only fail because Sombra betrays them.
Has her own agenda.
For her own agenda, which again is like this group, even though they have so much power, they're a shaky group because they all have their own like goals, and some of those are conflicting. You know what I mean? The only thing they have in common is they need Overwatch out of their way to be able to achieve
before we put Andres back on the speculation here, let's wrap up where we're at now. Now that we know about Talon, we know about Blackwatch, we know about Overwatch and Overwatch being shut down, we know about the Omnic crisis. Since then, the world's become to fall into chaos. Local political leaders accuse certain corporations of using covert operations to force government officials into accepting exploitative deals. This is what we talked about with Vishkar, right? Some notable cases of Vishkar destroying Caldo, Rio de Janeiro, and the Hyde Global hiring 2 international criminals that you may be aware of. This is your boy Junkrat and Roadhog basically trying to swindle insurance, and then they get screwed over in the deal and they blow up the guy's building because they don't get paid. The actions of criminal groups also becoming more brazen. Smuggling activities of the Deadlock Gang, terrorism, assassinations carried out by organizations like Talon. Former bases and assets are targeted. Individuals known as Soldier 76 have attacked Watchpoint Grand Mesa, stole the heavy pulse rifle. So Soldier's new weapon that you see him using now is actually something he stole. Talon infiltrated, and Reaper now attacked and broke into Gibraltar. Worse still, tensions build between Omnics and humans since the crisis has begun to boil over after its end, and the assassination of the spiritual leader, Mondada, by Talon's Widowmaker has sparked an even more human and Omnic war in Russia, known as the Second Omnic Crisis, which Moira is now a part of Talon's inner council. Nonetheless, several members of Overwatch continue to aid the innocent and deliver justice. This example has inspired new leadership generation of unique and visible individuals like Lucio, who uses well-known music inspired Rio de Janeiro systems. We already covered that. South Korean gamer Hana Song, aka Diva, employing her skills and controlling a mech. And now the former agents of Overwatch have decided it's time to stop sitting around, and they want to go back and refoil Talon as they come back to Watchpoint Gibraltar. Winston basically sees Reaper and activates Overwatch in the very first trailer.
Now, very important to note that we're getting to this boiling point, right? Like, enough events have transpired since Overwatch has been shut down. Jack Morrison, nowhere to be found. Nobody know where he is. Gabriel Reyes is still kind of unknown. Like, we know he's Reaper, but I think for a lot of the characters in the game, that might still be kind of like an unknown. They know Widowmaker definitely turned for the bad into Talon. We also know that crises around the world keep rising, right? Like things like a second Omnic crisis are being spoken of. So at this point, we have this new generation of Overwatch members, not the founding members, but we have new guys like Winston, like Tracer, that we know was trained by all the veterans at one point, like recently. And then we have new entrants, kind of like Lucio over in Rio de Janeiro. We have Diva over in Korea that are kind of like rising to the occasion. And I think that this core group that remains, they haven't been soured by the years and betrayals and anything like that. They still have this very positive outlook into the world, and they still
They're even
want to
getting
make a
new
change.
allies
Yeah,
with
they're even
Brigitte
yeah, absolutely. Well,
and Hammond.
Brigitte's in an interesting point because story-wise, I think she's traveling with Reinhard, like far away into Germany. I don't know. I don't even know if Reinhard is gonna choose to fight again. It seems like Reinhard has kind of like thrown the towel at this point. At least what we know from his comic.
Well,
Um,
from his video, Honor and Glory, it said that basically he said that he got the call from Winston and he needs to answer. That's where we basically left
oh
off.
yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Reinhard is
So he's on his way in.
is one of the
It's
only
kind of like
veterans.
where we left
Yeah.
off with May, right? May needs to get the information to Winston. That's where we left off with May.
Right.
So we're
So
making the
yeah.
assumption that they're both coming and they both met in our current present day environment.
So Winston couldn't hold back anymore. He's like, things are going to shit. I'm not gonna sit around and just watch everything burn down, knowing that at least I can do
Well,
something.
he just got attacked by Reaper in his own home.
Yeah, that too. And even before that, you could tell he was sad. He missed Overwatch. He missed acting for the greater good. He is not meant to be caged, man. He's meant to be free
Now,
and jumping all over the place.
Here's some things that I would be interested about. Okay, for starters, we still basically only get supplementary information as what Mercy has done and what Mercy is doing by virtue of everyone else. We really don't know what she's doing and how she like interacted between the uprising event and present day. That is a large block of time that we have no information about what she's doing as a doctor and how she and Moira kind of differentiated in their practices and what drove Moira into Talon from Blackwatch. We still are missing that large gap of info, right?
Right. And we know that Mercy was involved with a lot of the scientific research in Overwatch.
Right.
We know that she was in a big part responsible for the reconstruction of Genji as a cyborg ninja, basically. We also know that Anna stole her healing technology and adapted it a little bit in a more like offensive way to use it, in the battlefield. And we know this because of voice lines that interact in the game, right? Like Mercy tells her, I don't like how you're using my technology, Anna, or something like that. And Anna's like, well, sometimes the ends justify the means, or something like that. I can't remember the exact voice line, but something like that.
And it's also funny that I believe we could utilize some more information from Torbjorn. I think like we had kind of like a really like anger centric comic book with him. Like it didn't really tell us anything as far as I'm concerned. And like 3 of the original OG members of Overwatch, like the original team squad forming, have either joined the enemy and faked their death and went straight Batman, or faked their death and just to protect their daughter, right? Like, 'cause that's Anna, Soldier, and Morrison, and Reaper, right?
Yeah, a lot of the big founders are basically
like, I'm gonna fake my death.
Yeah, they're
It's
mercenaries.
Like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm gonna do that too.
A lot of them have been like, kind of like, I think they're a little jaded because a lot of them dedicated their lives to this cause, and they kind of got stabbed in the back, right? Even Gabriel Reyes, Jack Morrison, even Anna Amari, like all of them kind of like got a little screwed over after like giving so much to the world.
They were the 3 leadership icons of the organization to begin with too.
Basically.
So Andres, I want to ask you about one more guy that you might be familiar with. His last name is Shimada, and it's not Genji.
Mr. Hanzo.
We have no connections besides Genji for why Hanzo is in this game.
Well, I think that Hanzo is a lone wolf. I don't think he's involved in the Omnic crisis at all. I think he was just involved in this powerful kind of Yakuza style family in Japan. And he's more concerned about carrying the family legacy. He doesn't care about what's going on with the world. He's kind of like in his own world. But we know from the short when Genji comes back, Genji wants to let his brother know, like, listen, bro, I know that you and me were very enthralled in this lifestyle. I know that you want to carry on the family legacy. I know that I was messing around a lot when I was a kid. We had our differences, but there's more than this. Outside in the world, there's a lot of shit going on right now, and this is not worth it anymore. At the end of the dragons short, that's basically what Genji tells him. He tells him, "Listen, dude, I'm alive. Things have changed. I'm a cyborg ninja now. Get used to it.
It's my Halloween costume.
But you should come with me." Basically, that's what he tells him. You're gonna have to choose a side, whether you like it or not, because this
You said the world
outside
is
crisis,
changing and you have to choose a side.
this outside crisis is gonna get here eventually, and you're with the good guys or you're with the bad guys. I'm with the good guys. You should come with me. That's basically what Genji comes
Let's
in.
be Power Rangers, brother.
Yeah, he's basically like, stop ignoring what's happening outside in the world. Stop mourning. Stop worrying about these things. You need to like shake it off and choose a side.
Like Taylor Swift, boys.
Who are you gonna be with? Am I gonna have to keep fighting you, or are you gonna come with me? That's basically what he's saying.
Are you gonna let me use the bow now, older brother? Can I use it? Here, I'll let you borrow my shurikens for a little bit. No, like the Wikia and all things are. All we know is that Hanzo is in severe denial based off of the trauma of him, quote unquote, killing his brother, rather, or what he thought he did, which was killing his brother and putting him within an inch or within a millimeter of his life point.
Yeah, to Hanzo, Genji was dead. Like when he sees him as a cyborg ninja, he's like, wait, what? Brother?
He just thinks that he was getting assassinated, and he's basically paying homage to his brother by breaking into the Yakuza Shimada polar, I guess the parallel that they're making is that Shimada is equivalent to Yakuza in this case. And he wants to break into what he rejected, because the Empire, after killing his brother and doing what his father asked him to do, he rejected his father's empire. Now nobody's leading the Yakuza. They have no heir to the throne, and it basically folded. And to carry on his father's legacy. So they're just not doing that anymore. And now he's just sitting there. So I feel like I would like there's so many good story arcs that they can pursue, but it's like we're getting too much of the focus on these reveals for like new heroes and stuff, and they're like, okay, so we're gonna give you this super cool new hero, we're gonna explore a bunch of random information we're gonna throw at you and why they exist and why they're here, and kind of do these weird little teaser trailers like they did with the Sombre ARG, or like the Hammond Jetpack Cat thing, right, that they thought that was gonna go around. And they'll kind of do some teasers here and there and bring them in, like Maximilian and maybe I almost called him Tanjay. I can't even remember his name now. What was the guy's name from Vishkar again?
I can't
Sanjay. Sorry, Sanjay. So they're teasing these guys and like, oh, maybe these guys are who's next, and we have a little bit of information, and they're like, oh, this is a new hero, and then what they do is, here's the new hero, or here's the new map, and let us use that time to kind of explore some of our existing hero roster, right, and give you a little bit more
they've been very vague with the story this year, that is for sure. And all the characters that have been revealed have been very tangential characters. Like, we know they're not vital to the story, like Orisa or Hammond, that they're somehow involved in the story but not really directly with the main, like Omnic crisis, Overwatch. Like Hammond, for example, we just know he was a companion of Winston in the Moon, a hamster that was experimented with, but he has nothing to do with Omnics. He has nothing to do with the Omnic crisis. He just arrived to the Earth and kind of like...
Look at the animated short with Junkertown, too. It's like these guys are going in, going crazy and blowing up, and the only thing we know is that, oh, there's a new map, this is a really funny short, and oh, there's the Queen of Junkertown? What is that? And then you get
Yeah,
another teaser pic of that with Hammond.
that's another example of like a tangential story. The Queen of
Right.
Junkertown. Like we know that the Junkers kind of moved in into like these abandoned areas of Australia where
Yeah.
basically these omniums, the factories that were used to produce Omnics were abandoned and they live there, right? So that's kind of their association with that part of the crisis. But again, it kind of like its own separate story at that point.
They're kind of
Which
left out as an island.
yeah, it leads me to talk a little bit about why do you think that is. I have my own little speculations. I think that this year, for example, Overwatch League came out, big event for Overwatch. A lot of their resources got diverted, but more than that, we've seen a lot of balance changes in the game and changes to heroes inside of the game. And I think that that has to put a halt at least on the storyline production, right? Like when you're changing your core game that you're basing everything around, it's kind of hard to be like, let's release a bunch of these stories, but then will they make sense later? Like in the Dragon's short, for example, it's not a big deal because you can kind of like shake it off to anything else. But Hanzo uses Scatter Arrow in that short. And that thing is not in the game anymore. So it's kind of like the thing I'm talking about. Like you might fear dating your shorts or your stories if you're constantly changing the game, which happened a lot this year.
And I mean, they're doing other stuff too with the shorts where they're like, you can definitely see a very different style, I would say, with like how they're going about them. Like they're kind of giving you more of a personality shotgun approach, like trying to get you a little bit more of seeing the heroes. Like for I think a perfect example is honestly the Diva and then the Reinhardt shorts. Because they're just saying, okay, here's what they were. They're doing like this snapshot in time and like a transitional period in their lifestyle, right? Like that moment that we see Hana Song hopping into the suit and doing something, it may not necessarily be like a crux moment like the Reinhardt short was in his life and his backstory and like a borderline traumatic event, but it's definitely some kind of surprise event that would have been maybe the beginning of what she would have to expect as her new norm, or
Yeah, right. And
something like
it
that.
does. They do reveal some personality traits. Like a lot of these, like shorts and stuff they've gotten this year, are basically character setups. They are just introducing characters and they're giving us a
Or a
taste
map.
of how they interact with other people, their personality, what drives them, what they like to do maybe on their spare time, things like that. Nothing too committed to the story, but I really, really hope that come this BlizzCon, we get something, like something that drives the story forward. I want to know what Overwatch is going to do. I want to know who can Winston bring together. I want to see the first real fight with Talon. You know what I mean? Like a showdown. Like, okay, we've had a few that I thought were really awesome. That release short where Widowmaker is battling Winston and Tracer and Reaper too. Um, Super awesome. We got the cartoon short where Genji, Winston, and Tracer are fighting Doomfist. That was also
That was
super,
the
super
hypest
awesome.
video ever.
That was really cool. So I
I think
really
it's one of
hope
my
we get
favorite
more of
ones.
those. I want to see the showdowns with talent because eventually it's gonna happen, right? Like it's gonna go down. I'm also very interested in knowing what happens with my boy McCree. Where he at? We know that from the comic short, he's kind of been traveling on its own, doing very lone wolf, helping out people here and there, but only because he has to. Like, I think that there's a part in McCree that wants to do good and misses Overwatch because of that. It was a way for him to
His
like give
story
back.
is so interesting
Mm-hmm.
because like he's the only one out of all of those Blackwatch reps outside of Genji that goes into something that is like Blackwatch. Like Reaper and Moira, they go full tilt into like what they want for Moira or for Reaper. He goes straight into like the evil side. Whereas like, the outlaw that kind of is vigilante sometimes, or like the Robin Hood of Overwatch, he's still doing the same thing in Blackwatch that he was doing now. He's just by himself.
Right.
And then you have Genji who literally just like tries to escape all of the repercussions of being a part of Blackwatch and getting shut down and goes to the mountains and finds Zenyatta, right?
Yeah. McCree is a character that is very dear to me, not only because I love playing him in the game, but I love the personality of McCree because he's the kind of character that needs no recognition, right? But then again, he does these really good deeds for other people, but he's never wanting to do it because he wants to get recognized. In fact, I think that he kind
He
of
just does it to
dislikes
hide.
he dislikes that, right? He doesn't want the attention. He doesn't want like these like praise or anything like that. He's just
Yeah.
like, I want to do my own thing. I want you to leave me alone. But he also can't stand to just stand there and see some injustice happens, right? Like I feel like is what you said. He has like that like Robin Hood-esque vibe where he wants to help the little guy, and he
He's
hates
so
like
cool because like
authority.
he's one of the few heroes in Overwatch of like looking at the timeline by which we get the stories for this character. Not only do we have more than one piece of information for this hero about what their backstory is, but it's all come in reverse order. Right? Like we got the most current thing about McCree was in the comic book we got at the very beginning.
The
It was
first
like one,
comic, yeah, the first comic that ever
the
came out was
very
the
first
McCree.
comic, yeah. And then we got the information about, oh well, he was kind of involved in Blackwatch. And then it kind of like goes a little bit more, and then we like get a little bit more information at Uprising, and then we get a lot of information about that same event a little bit after that in the Retribution one. So if you remember, guys and girls out there, the Overwatch Uprising event is usually like the big lore fest that happens every year. And that happens after Halloween of Terror, that happens after Christmas, that happens after I think even the New Year event, right? The Lunar New Year. It's after 3 more events, then we get Uprising. So we also get a bunch of lore about this at BlizzCon. So that's why we're kind of hitting it now. Because for starters, BlizzCon news cycle sucks before BlizzCon because they're trying to hide everything.
And
Okay?
they don't reveal anything.
Yeah, which is a good thing because like if you don't hide anything for a couple weeks, you're not gonna have anything to say. You're like, hey,
That's
welcome
true.
to
That's
our
true.
house.
It's the magic
There's
of
nothing
BlizzCon.
new. Yeah, and then they reveal everything in like 10 minutes in the very first opener, and everybody's just like, oh my gosh, I need more information.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. I was looking forward to like that big animated book that they were talking about releasing that got canceled.
Yeah.
Who knows? I think
Mm.
that at one point this year they made a big decision to change the story, or I don't know. There was a big turning point in the Overwatch lore department where they were like, the direction we're going is not where we want to end up, so scrap that. Let's start again. I feel like that's what they did, and that's why we haven't gotten a lot of stuff. I think that they're having to rework a lot of the things. Hopefully, this BlizzCon we get a lot more. I want to hear more about McCree. I want to hear more about Genji and Hanzo. I want to hear a little bit about Zarya. Actually, we've got a few things about Zarya, but not too many. And then I want a showdown with Talon. Please, Blizzard, give it to me. Give me like a 5-part series of a showdown with Talon. Like I'm
Also,
okay if it's
I
like
wanna
10-minute
know-
episodes.
I want to know. Hanzo has to choose a side, boys and girls. Please tell me what side he chose. Because if he chose Talon, I'm on the hype train for life, dude.
You know,
Oh.
Hanzo seems like one of those guys that would go with Talon at first, but then after
Right?
that big showdown, and him realizing how shitty all the Talon people are, he might go back to his bro. That's kind of like my guess.
I feel like Hanzo is like him and McCree are just gonna go make the bad boys team, and it's just gonna be whatever they do. It's just like their own thing, and they're like, "Hey, Lucio, make us some music, bruh."
Hanzo and McCree have a lot of similarities, actually. I think that their personalities clash because they kind of fit the same role, just in like different parts of the world. To the point where like it would be interesting.
Emo kid and the other one's Robin Hood.
Basically, there's a one interaction inside of the game between Hanzo and McCree where like
Yeah, they do not like each other.
McCree says like your sake tastes like dirt or something like that, and then Hanzo's like, oh, I wouldn't expect you to say that, unsophisticated fool, or something like that. So
oh, jeez.
it almost looks like they have like some banter going on. Like McCree looks down on Hanzo, and Hanzo looks down on McCree, basically.
He also has this. I think he has that one thing. Is like he brought a bow and arrow to a gunfight, something like that. Like I thought that
Yeah,
was really
yeah, and
funny.
they're both like sharpshooters in their own right, right?
Yeah,
Like, so
yeah.
there's kind of like some competition there too. I feel like those are two very like alpha males, kind of like we're gonna
I
fight
could
for a
just see Genji like
territory.
leaving, because Genji's technically neutral. Him and
Yeah,
Zenyatta are
Genji
actually
doesn't care.
technically neutral too.
Yeah,
I can see Genji and Zenyatta just being like fulfilling the dad 76 role for the team 3. You know what I mean? Just like, okay, guys, kids, children.
yeah, calm it down. You can have a shoot off later.
Genji just like deflecting McCree bullets and Zenyatta trancing through arrows, just like calm down, calm down.
That would be a nice scene. I would actually love to see that the day Hanzo and McCree meet.
Oh man.
All right, we are kind of running a little bit out of time here. Do you want to make any last predictions or anything you would like to see this year for lore?
More Omnics. That's what I want. I think at the core,
Maximilian!
I love the story. I love what they're doing. I want more Omnics because I want them to kind of explore this space, because they're trying to like do something that a lot of other, I guess, comic books have done in the past. I don't know about movies per se or books because I'm not very well read, but I do like the 3 gender exploration thing. I really like that because they're like, what exactly is Omnic representing in our universe? Like, how are we exploring this motif, and what are they trying to teach us through using this? And it's more of like a, I don't know, universal type of thing. It's like
No,
how they're
you're right.
commentary on life.
I really do love it because it's very philosophical in that sense, right? And
Right.
we're in a day and age where the topic of could a machine feel or think and be like an individual, I think that that's a topic that's very relevant in today's day and age with AI coming into fruition and a lot of the most intelligent minds that we have right now kind of like talking about the possibility of AI eventually becoming, its own thing and very
Yeah.
advanced. So I don't know. It's a very present day kind of conversation. They touch on it like a few years more advanced. A lot of people talk about, the machine apocalypse. We've seen things like the Matrix or even like older stories than
edge.
that. Yeah, exactly. So like that theme has always been there, but I think that Overwatch, I like that they take
They're
it a
kind of
step
like hitting it from
further.
the other side.
Yeah, they take it a step further where like, yeah, there's gonna be a conflict, there's gonna be a big war, but what happens after that? Like, could we come
What if the AI are good guys and bad guys?
can we
You
come
know what
to
I mean?
live with them? Yeah, because they develop feelings and thoughts of their own. They kind of become like people too, and they can learn from humans. I think that for some Omnics, and this is all speculation from me, but emotion is something that humans have very developed, right? Like we have a big culture, we have music, we have arts, we have all this like thriving culture that is based around feelings and emotion as humans. So I think that Omnics look into that, like look up to that, right? Like they're coming into the world very new as infants into the culture of feelings and all that stuff. So I think that they have a
What
lot to
about you,
learn from
Andres?
humans.
What do you want? What do you want to see in the game, man?
I want to see more bad guys.
You
I want to
more
see
bad
more.
boys?
I want to see more.
Get out the
story
leather
in the,
coats, boys, and the chains.
I want to see more of the story in the bad guys. I don't know. I've always been a fan of when movies or TV shows or anything does that. Like I was a big fan of the Last Avengers, for example, where it was a big center on Thanos and his motives, and he was almost presented as a main character. And he was not just like driven by evilness, but we got to
The
see
anti-hero.
we almost get to see like his reasoning of why he's
Yeah.
doing this. So I would like to see that for a few more of the heroes, like Doomfist. He's a
think-
very Thanos like character.
I think that Blizzard knocked it out of the park with making Doomfist like the exact personality that you would expect to be leading this organization. Like through combat we evolve. Like that's just like, it's not. It's just like I'm not a bad dude. It's like you're a bad dude. It's like yeah, well, only if you're weak. It's like I'm a bad guy only if you're weak. It's like whoa, okay. This is the guy
basically.
that's in charge, you know.
Also, Reaper. I want to know more into the backstory of Reaper. Like, what happened to him? I want to know how he got into this weird
They have to
wraith,
make him good in the meta
evil
first,
form.
Andres.
Yeah, right.
Buff
That's true.
Reaper, buff his lore, buff his ability.
Or even Moira. What are her experiments? Why are people so afraid of her to the point where like she got banned from a lot of like experimentation of Overwatch? We know Mercy
Yeah.
doesn't like her at all. Like what was she experimenting on, and how is she and Reaper linked together? What did she give him to make him the way he is right now? Was it
He's
necessary?
so crazy.
Was he
yeah.
like about to die? Is he like in the middle of like death and alive? Like what happened to him? Like what did Moira? It's almost like Moira did like that Game of Thrones thing where like the mountain gets revived as a zombie kind of thing in order for him not to die. You know what I'm talking about?
It's alive.
Yeah. Like what happened to him?
Yeah, I don't know. I really like. There's one thing that I will say that I really love about this game, with regards to how they're approaching introducing new heroes, is they're really going about making sure that they have a good mix of, here is an evil character, here's a really good character, here's a super funny character,
Here's a cutesy
Hammond.
character.
Here's a cutesy character, right? Here is just like a really, really strong figure with Brigitte. Like Brigitte's just a freaking tank. Like she's huge in the game and she's so strong. She's there to mix things up meta-wise, but she's also there to like really showcase how strong and different support can look in a team environment. I mean, they don't have to be like, hey, here's a beam of healing and here's a gun, I'm gonna shoot and heal. You know, it's like, no, here's like armor and like protection. It's like, how do you meld these ideals together? And I really also like how they do the evil way too with Moira. I think Moira having an evil healer was just so cool. And I want another evil healer, not just because I'm a support main, but just because of the diversity in that category.
Mm-hmm.
And exploration there is so interesting to me.
Yeah, very, very.
But at
cool
the same time,
themes.
we don't have any evil tanks either.
We need an evil Reinhardt. That's what we need.
There's that huge Omnic. Like here's what we need. We need another Omnic that's not like Orisa, that's evil, and is a tank. That's what we need.
There you go. Blizzard, make it happen.
We figured it out.
That's how we conclude the show, boys.
Mic drop. We're done here, boys and girls.
All right, dude. Take us home.
All right, guys and girls. Let's get out of here. Got a few people to thank over at patreon.com/Omnic Lab, helping us get to BlizzCon all the way through. We have all of our Patreon supporters, and especially those of them who are at the top level, at the diamond level, supporting us a large amount each month. We have Ben K, Britmus, Christoplaya, Durandal, Jan Jinkle, Lissum, Mr. Mars, Roger B, Shazir, Solo on the PS4, Terry F, Top Score Solutions, of course, and Tragic Zach. Thank you guys so much. We do not have any new patrons this week, and we could really use the support moving forward. Let me tell you, I have to have a special shout out on two of these guys on the list. One of them for the memes and one of them for the feels. So for the memes, we have your boy Durandal actually in the list here, was featured on Jimmy Bloxham. His Twitter feed showed a video promoting the World Cup, and Andres and I were sitting next to Blevins from High Noon Productions, and Jimmy and Durandal were sitting in front of us, and we look so derpy on this video, like
we do
cheering
look super
for Overwatch.
derpy.
When
But
nothing
hey,
is going on, by the way.
we made
This
it
is like
to the big
pre-show,
screen.
pre-launch. We didn't even know Moira existed when we got there. That's probably why. But
that's good.
it was just funny. So anyways, shout out to Durandal for that, for the memes, and also to Shazir for, I can't really say anything because I feel like it's too private to really share, but he's been doing a lot of back-end stuff to make sure that the BlizzCon is not that expensive for me when I get there, instead of just like obviously the plane tickets. But he's been doing a lot of things like on the back end that I don't really feel comfortable sharing. But I just wanted to say publicly thank you, because I don't have any words besides that.
Yeah, Shaz has been a big supporter of the show for a long time. He's a great guy. I love having him in the community. Thank you so much, man. Also, thanks for everyone in the chat today. It was super active. Carol, Drunken, Shaz is here too. Thank you so much, guys. It makes it very cool to talk about lore and all that stuff with you guys here. We also have
Shout out to
Still Your
Drunken Monk in the
Mind.
chat saying hashtag support mains need the darkness. If you guys want to support us or you're wondering how to do that, twitch.tv/OmnicLab. You can do the affiliate sub button because we are affiliates. You can also go to patreon.com and do any support level that helps us. We'll shout you out. And if you're a diamond, we'll shout you out every week. Andres and I are going to make sure that by the end of the next 24 hours, we are on Spotify because we have been looking at this and we've been going through it and we keep dodging it back and forth and all the other shows are doing it. And we will be on Spotify by the end of the week. I promise. And it's super easy and you guys will be able to find us. And if you're wondering how to share it, you can share it with us and we'll get that link to you in the show notes, hopefully by the time this airs in iTunes. Andres, where can people find you?
If you want to find me, you can do so over on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games.
You want to join anything else that's Omnic Lab related? OmnicLab.com/links. If you want to find me, I'm at the tag NotRob on Twitch, on Twitter and on Instagram. You can also find my other show, Velen Chosen Podcast, talking about Hearthstone. I'll be uploading that one tomorrow. And if you want to talk to me about D&D, you can hit me up anytime because I've been playing like crazy with my group and I love those guys and girls that I'm playing with, especially since one of the girls is my wife. We'll see you guys next week. Remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. We'll see you next week. And if you want to talk lore, that might be the weekly discussion coming up. So let's do it. See you guys.